stage is yours.
Please. Hello, everybody. It's a great pleasure to be here in Oslo, invited to a conference dealing with energy. But nowadays, when I accepted this invitation, we were living in a different world, where energy was about energy. But nowadays, we are living in a different world. It was mentioned February 24th, it has changed completely the situation. And the invasion of Russian military, the aggression of Russia against Ukraine will change Europe at more than 1989 has changed Europe. It will have a long-standing impact. What is going on in Ukraine, ladies and gentlemen? Is it about bringing Ukraine back to the motherland? No, it's about much more democracy. It's the value of democracy. Putin is not concerned about NATO. Putin is concerned about an event like Maidan, which took place in the capital of Ukraine, in Kiev, some years ago. And he is concerned about the challenges of democracy and rule of law. And therefore, I think the aggression in Ukraine is also directed against all of us. And we should be aware about that. Russia, after the beginning of the 90s, when the Soviet Union disappeared, Russia was integrated economically more or less in the global world economy. What we will face now is the exclusion of Russia from the world economy based on the sanctions which were taking place. And therefore, energy will play a key role. It was mentioned that Germany is highly dependent on Russian gas. So what can be done to find other sources must be done and should be done. And I think your country, Norway, will play an important role in the future design of the energy landscape. But when I accepted this invitation here to Oslo, at that time, everybody was talking about energy transition, that the world under the pressure of climate change is forced to leave the period of fossil fuels into and moving into a period of non-fossil fuels, of renewable energy. This is a huge challenge, and I must tell you that this hasn't changed. Putin is a threat for all of us, and a threat for a peaceful development of the world, especially in Eastern Europe and in Europe. But he does not impress the climate. The world climate, the transition of the world climate, the increasing heat in the global climate will continue. And my nightmare is that we will face a hot summer and a cold winter. So we will have both challenges in one. We must continue with the transition of the energy. And the war of aggression in Ukraine might have a positive impact on that in the middle-term perspective. But in the short-term perspective, it's more complicated. The speaker before me has mentioned the timeline which was decided by the new government, by the new German government, before the war of aggression in Ukraine. Whether this timeline can be fulfilled in any form, it remains to be seen, because the situation has changed dramatically. Nowadays, the supply side, energy security, is the key factor if you look to the realities on the ground. But I'm pretty optimistic that Germany will continue the path to energy transition, even in this more challenging environment we are having now. So from that point of view, ladies and gentlemen, I think working together between Germany and Norway offers a great opportunity for both sides. And I hope that this will materialize in the coming years. The big problem is the short-term problem, the one-year perspective. The middle-term perspective, I think, is more manageable. But the short-term perspective will be a huge challenge. Nevertheless, I think the public mood in my country is backing the solidarity with the victims of aggression, backing the solidarity with the Ukrainians. So there's an ongoing debate in the European Union and in NATO with our transatlantic allies and in my country, in Germany, whether the delivery of oil and gas by Russia should be stopped, knowing about the high costs which will be raised. I can't tell you what will be the outcome. It's a very complicated debate. I don't want to go in the nitty-gritty details, but it's extremely complicated. And my feeling is that we should move on in the direction of full solidarity with the victims of aggression. So, knowing all this, I think I should also speak a little bit about the changes we have in Germany. To understand the German mentality, Germany was living since my whole life under the trauma of the Second World War, initiated by Germans, initiated by the Third Reich under Hitler, but it created a certain trauma. The country was completely destroyed. 12 to 14 million people from the east came to the west, lost everything, refugees expelled. And it was a situation where the majority of Germans on the left and on the right decided in an emotional way that never again should this happen. We don't understand this, so we are not talking any longer about military, we are not any longer talking about a military-based foreign policy. We don't understand that, we don't want that. We have our big ally, the Americans who protected us, and let us stay away with such requests. Many of our allies, many of our neighbors thought this is a cheap excuse for the Germans not to be engaged in military action, not to be engaged in the hard problems of foreign and security policy. But it was not an excuse. Believe me, it was deeply rooted in the collective memory of my country. But under the pressure of the war, under the war of aggression by Putin against Ukraine, this changed dramatically. This changed because we had to change. This is a historical shift we are facing, and we had to change. And thanks to the new chancellor, we made this shift. And this is a serious shift. So let me tell you that German pacifism, as it was called in the past, is gone. And Germany now has engaged itself in supporting the efforts of the Western allies backing Ukraine. It will be very complicated, to support Ukraine for my country according to energy. And we will have to do the utmost to invest more in renewable energy. The government is ready to move forward in this direction, but still there is a gap of 1 to 3 years we have to deal with, and it will be very complicated. I think we will move on to transform the energy system from natural gas to hydrogen. And I think this offers a new opportunity for the relationship between our two countries, because hydrogen might be the fuel of a renewable energy system, and it will be also usable for production of steel, for other industrial production, chemical industry, and therefore I think it will be a part of the future. The government is ready to invest more into renewable energy, as I said. They will streamline and shorten the procedures, the bureaucratic procedures. But still, it's a huge challenge. We shouldn't underestimate that. And let's be realistic. It will be done, it must be done, and it was, the speaker before me said that the big companies, energy companies, have made the switch. And this is true. These are different companies now, the same label, the same name, but with a very different policy. This change has been made. It's a change in the industry, it's a change in politics. The government is ready to do what is needed for this energy transition. And I think it's a huge opportunity, not only for my country, but for Europe, because Germany is still the leading economy in Europe, and what happens in Germany has a tremendous impact for all our neighbors. So I think it would be extremely wise if Norway, which is a big actor in energy policy, would use this opportunity. And I think this is not only the opportunity based on the war of aggression in Ukraine, but it's more the opportunity of the transition from the carbon-based economy into a non-carbon-based economy, in an economy which is based on renewable energy. And there I can tell you, my country is serious. And this is backed by a majority of the German people. So we will see that what the future will bring. But now we have to deal with the new security challenges at the same moment when we have to deal with the transition of our energy policy. The security challenges will be tremendous. And this is the moment where we should understand that this is the moment for Europe. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know how you sensed the weeks behind us, but I'm now 74 years old. I never had the feeling that Europeans are so united. It's the first time that Europe is really united. And look, for example, one of the most painful questions of disunity in the European Union was migration. Now, I don't know the debate here in Norway, but I know the debate in my own country and in the European Union. Poland, Hungary were in an extreme opposition against further migration. And look now, overnight, there is a huge solidarity with the Ukrainians, with the fleeing Ukrainians. They opened up the borders, and refugees are broadly accepted wherever you go in the European Union. And they reached a consensus that the refugees will be accepted and get the permission to work without any formal procedure, and children can be brought to school and daycare and all of this. It was impossible a few weeks ago. But this sense of unity, I think, is extremely important. It's not as a question of sense of unity inside the EU, whether you are inside or outside. As long as you are European, I think this is a value in itself which must be preserved. And we will see that the European Union will also transform itself from a common market into a geopolitical actor. That's what Macron was talking, the French president was talking about for years. But it needed these tragedy of this war of aggression against Ukraine, that we could see results not of words, but of a changing, of a shift in the geopolitical environment. So the European Union will transform itself into a geopolitical actor. Europeans will do more to defend themselves. And I think there will be a combination of European Union and NATO in the future, extremely important. And I think this can also have a positive impact on the transatlantic relations, because America without America, in the short term, it's impossible to reach these goals. We need the United States, and therefore we need NATO as an anchor, a transatlantic anchor. So this will be the new security environment. What will happen to Russia? I don't know. Because the Russians, Putin, it's such a pity that Putin is destroying and betraying its own people again. It's not the first time that the Russians made this experience. But the first victim was Ukraine. The second victim will be the Russian people of this policies, of this dream, of Putin's dream of restoring the Russian Empire. I think it won't work, but it's hard at the moment to figure out how this can end, how this will end. We shouldn't be naive again. One time was costly enough, paid by the Ukrainians, and we shouldn't allow ourselves a second time to be naive. So we must be prepared, and we should do everything to be prepared. This is not a question of left or right. This is not a question of party politics. This is a question of the survival of democracy. And this is a question of survival of European democracy. And therefore, I think we should stay united. This is extremely important. The sense of unity, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to say this here in Norway, in Oslo, is extremely valuable. And when we can defeat this aggression, then only based on preserving the sense of unity. And therefore, I hope that Norway will be a decisive factor in the sense of unity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Fischer. If you allow, I have a couple of follow-up questions.
Please.
For you. Do you see any immediate possibilities to stop the war in Ukraine?
I would like to have a positive answer, but unfortunately not. The only way to stop the war immediately would be if Putin would decide stop it and the Russian forces would retreat. But that's a wish, but not a realistic assumption.
Do you see a future without Russia raising war against Ukraine, but with still Putin in charge of Russia? Or does the war go away with him?
I'm not a prophet.
No.
Sorry. I mean, what we must understand, the Russian people will be our neighbor forever. And we will we will have to deal with this factor. And hopefully, one day, hopefully during my lifetime, Russia will also turn into a serious democracy. Because I think this is the precondition to restore trust between neighbors, between them and us.
How will the events of February and March change Europe and especially the European Union in the long term, you think?
Well, the European Union will transform itself into a geopolitical actor. The stumbling block up to now was Germany, but Germany has transformed itself, and this is backed by a vast majority of the German people, according to polls. This transformation of the European Union as a geopolitical power will have a dramatic impact on the Western Balkans. We should be very careful about the Western Balkans because Putin's finger are everywhere there, and this is a part of Europe. But also the future of Turkey is still there. I'm not talking about membership, but geopolitical interests and peace and stability in the neighborhood will play an important role. So we will see more of that the European interests will be redefined law according to geopolitical interests.
We have most of the Norwegian energy industry here today. Which role do you see for Norway in the near future as a provider of energy for Europe?
Well, you are still a big provider for energy for Europe, at least from a German perspective. I think 1/3 of our gas supply is coming from Norway. And I think we have excellent relations, also in trade, and this offers great opportunity. And I told you, not only based on the crisis events, that we need different suppliers. And if Norway can increase the gas supply, it would be highly appreciated. But also in a middle-term perspective, the energy transition, the hydrogen system which will be built up in Germany, offers huge opportunities. And Norway is always welcomed.
Thank you so much for taking the time to share your knowledge with us here, Mr. Fischer, and we hope to see you again in Norway again sometime. Thank you very much.
All the best.
Joshka Fischer.
Bye-bye.
Nå skal vi skifte litt fokus. Vi skal vende blikket hjem igjen. Og statsministeren, han liker kanskje ikke ordet industrieventyr, men havvind blir utpekt som en ny næring som kan bety masse for Norge og Europa. Og havvindseventyret, som jeg fremdeles liker å kalle det, skal bygges på skuldrene av det vi allerede kan. På skuldrene av kompetanse og mannskap som allerede er på plass, ofte langs den norske kysten. Blant aktørene som ser inn i fremtiden Norsk. Så nå skal vi endelig til Vestlandet og besøke det virkelige Norge. Se her.
I dag vi i Dusavik. Det var for så vidt her oljeeventyret startet også for oss. 55 år siden så var vi i gang her. Litt andre vilkår enn det i dag, men vi har vært med hele veien, og vi har tenkt å være med både på resterende del av oljealderen og det som kommer etter. Det som jeg er mest stolt over vel den kompetansen og den erfaringen som ligger i alle ansatte vi har.
Siden 1965, når denne basen bak meg så tidens lys, så har jo samhandling vært det som logistikk er. Det er et flust av aktører som trigges av et behov ute i havet. Det starter med leverandøren, så går det videre til transportøren, så kommer det til baser, så skal det på fartøy, og så skal det ut, og så kommer alt tilbake igjen. Så god logistikk, det liker jeg å si, det er god planlegging, og gjennom god planlegging så er god samhandling. Og så er det betydelige muligheter også fremover nå til å bruke det aspekter rundt samhandling til å dra bransjen videre.
De fremvoksende næringene som kommer nå, det er det mye som skal flyte i havet eller være under havet. Og det er det vi har jobbet med. Vi driver med logistikk. Det gjør vi til de som har et behov offshore. Og de næringene som kommer, de vil også ha det fremover. Om det er vind eller mining eller havbruk.
Jeg har aller mest lyst til å få til kombinasjonen av bærekraft og la olje og gass være en viktig driver nå for den omstillingen som Norge også skal gjennom. Og det tror jeg vi er stilt til å få til. Samtidig så tror jeg det ligger et vanvittig stort potensial tilbake til samhandlingsdimensjonen. Det å jobbe sammen og utnytte innsatsfaktorene som allerede er der, og gå ifra å ha 2 fartøy til 1 fartøy, det er også en halvering i forhold til dagens utgangspunkt. Så jeg tror begge de kombinasjonene er det som skal til for å dra oss videre.
Det jeg er mest rolig for, det er rammevilkårene for bransjen. Forutsigbarheten i det som skal skje fremover. Vi ser det nå knyttet til tildelingsrundene. Vi ser det politiske klimaet strammer seg til. Så det er på en måte det som utgjør den største risikoen, sånn som vi ser det.
Det som er viktig for meg fremover, er nå det at firmaet fortsatt i den grønne retningen, og at det fortsatt utvikler seg og får flere samarbeidspartnere, og fortsatt på andre områder, og ikke bare låse seg til en ting. Så det er noe viktig for utviklingen.
Det kjekkeste det må vel være først og fremst kollega, miljø. Det har så mye å si for å trives på jobb. Jeg har lyst på en grønnere fremtid, selvfølgelig. Det er vanskelig å gå vekk fra olje og gass. Jeg ser egentlig på at det må vi ha litt av uansett, men jeg satser jo på en mer bærekraftig fremtid.
Her på Bergkvam på Jelsa så er det i dag Europas største steinbrudd. Om noen ganske få år så skal vi her ha et industriområde der vi skal produsere flytende fundamenter for offshore vindturbiner i betong, som er det mest miljøvennlige alternativet, for å støtte utviklingen av en norsk og en europeisk flytende havvindindustri.
Gi oss balanserte rammevilkår, vær helt trygg på at bransjen er med.
Få ut fingeren. De må komme i gang, de må på en måte innse at havvind er en viktig del av det grønne skiftet i Norge, og det er en stor ressurs for Norge som vi kan utnytte.
Jeg tror definitivt ikke måten vi har det i dag er godt nok i morgen. Jeg liker å se der vi er som en base case i seg selv. Det potensialet som ligger urørt allerede i dag, bare på de verdikjedene som er nå. Der er så mye å hente ut, og det tror jeg i olje og gassen må også gjøre sammen.
Neste taler har tidligere leder Equinors avdeling for fornybar energi. Nå er han senior vice president for forretningsutvikling og sjef for region Norge i Aker Offshore Wind. Han sa i forbindelse med Energy Connected i fjor at, og jeg siterer, Aker Offshore Wind mener at utviklingen av en norsk leverandørkjede for havvind vil være avgjørende for at vi som nasjon skal lykkes med havvind. Da, og sikkert masse annet, skal vi få høre mer om når jeg nå gir scenen til Sebastian Bringsværd fra Aker Offshore Wind. Velkommen på scenen.